Hello, Floss Tube. Welcome to Stitchy Fix and another Flossmas event. I am so happy to report that I have finished FFO'd Sophia and Colin's stockings in time for Christmas. And I thought it might be fun if you heard about my process. So I read the instructions in the dimensions kit for how they finished it. I needed to stitch the stitching line, which is like doing back stitch because you count the squares and put that onto the cloth. The second thing I needed to do is I needed to mark a cutting line. In the dimensions kit, it called for a 1/2 inch width for the cutting line, which was great. So then I take my handy dandy, sewing gauge, and I marked the 1/2 inch all the way around. Then my stitchy friend Donna, who also has a daughter-in-law who is a major seamstress, had instructions ready for me, like how they did some cotton stockings. And Donna was gracious enough to actually put an example in there in case I had any questions regarding the methods, which was very helpful because it's a confidence thing when you haven't done it a lot. It's not like it's hard stitching, but you want to remind yourself of the correct method. I chose to use red velvet, as you saw in a prior floss tube, for the back, and the cotton candy cane lining. So it was quite a little bit of a process the first time because I pinned the velvet. So basically you make the lining with 2 pieces of cotton faced together, and you leave an opening at the bottom toe so that when you turn everything inside out, you'll be able to do that. I then pinned the velvet right sides together to the stitch. Oh, excuse me, I forgot a step. So I wanted to put interfacing behind my stitches so that they didn't pull out if for some reason the loose knot got in there or something and loosened up some of the stitches. I also knew I did not want to add interfacing to the seam to make it extra thick. So from that 1/2 inch cut line, so I cut those out, I then traced that onto interfacing. Then I went all the way around the stocking measurements again and marked 5/8 in so that I could have an 1/8 of a margin on the interfacing so it wouldn't hit on the stitching line. So we've already been through the edges, several times with the math, which I wanted to be extremely accurate so that these turned out nicely. So then I put the interfacing on that first. Then when I went to stitch the stitched Aida, so this is on 14 count Aida, to the velvet, I pinned everything in place for the first stocking. And as I'm stitching, and I did my pins really close together, I'm noticing that the velvet is sort of stretching. So when I was done, I was a bit askew, even though I had pins in it, and there was a piece that I wanted to correct. I thought, okay, it'll lay flat if I do this, that, and the other thing. So I frogged some of my regular sewing stitches, and I did use a size 3 stitch on my Juki machine just to make sure that everything stayed in place. And here, lo and behold, it stayed the tracks in the velvet that I had sewn. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I noticed a couple places where I had pinned, it had pulled the velvet. So alas, that was not going to work. So then I decided, okay, I will do the tried and true old-fashioned trained way. I will baste them together first. So that is, then I went around the stocking again and I hand basted the velvet to the Aida, and then I sewed it together, and that was totally fine. It all stayed in place. It's nice and straight. The nap goes all the same way. And then I turned it inside out, and my sewing wasn't exactly perfect, so there were a few places where the stitching line basting, which was like the first step, needed to be frogged, but that was no big deal. Then I had to take those 2 outside pieces and attach them to the lining at the top, and so that it would be fully lined and everything would be sealed. And then I realized, well, because the velvet, I intended to use a velvet hanger on the stocking, but given my experience already for the prior 2 hours of all this measuring and redoing, I happen to have some red velvet ribbon, and that is much more stable than making a tab out of the velvet. So once that was all done, and everything I've been pressing all along in this all these different steps, and then I finished, and once I turned it inside out, I stitched together the toe. And the first one took about 2.5 hours just for nerves and math and redoing math. But the second one took like 45 minutes from start to finish for fully finishing. I do, after my oopsie, well, so then I take a dinner break between the two. Then I go to start the second stocking, and I go to start cutting the velvet out, and I have it on the wrong side. So there's a little extra cut in it. There is enough red velvet left for Maisie's stocking. Now I've returned the pattern and the instructions to Donna today. So hopefully I either remember how to do it for Maisie's by the time I finish it, or I'll just borrow it back. So that is my adventures in finishing a stocking. I did not look at a YouTube video. I mean, I did read the instructions in the dimensions kit. But ta-da! I am very, very pleased with these stockings, and that's my stocking saga for today. I hope you all stitch as much as you want or as little as you want. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching. Bye.